Welcome to A Few Minutes with Peter Grandich. I'm your host, Al O'Grady, and for the next few minutes, we'll be talking to Peter, getting his insights on the markets, commodities, business, politics, sports, and life in general. Now, Peter Grandich is the editor of the Grandich Letter, which was first published back in 1984. He has been a market strategist, a portfolio manager of 4 hedge funds, a mutual fund that bared his name, and is widely known for his accurate forecasts and no-hedge market perspective. He appears regularly on television and radio and is widely quoted in leading financial publications. He's also the co-founder and managing member of Trinity Financial Sports and Entertainment Management Company, an insurance and estate planning firm specializing in servicing professional athletes and entertainers. Peter, as always, welcome back to the program.
Glad to be back, as always.
Okay. Peter, let's get right into this. The first quarter is over for all intents and purposes. Report card time. And let's see if you have to do your Fonzie impersonation by saying that you were wrong. I know you like to say that. Let's start off. In the latter part of 2011, you looked for a credible U.S. Stock market rally, and in 2012, it took hold. You saw it increasing to possibly a marginable new high. Now, with that, a couple of weeks ago, you issued a yellow alert that basically said, while the market can still eke out that new high, you think it would be wise maybe to start selling in stages, and want to be maybe you want to be mostly out of equities by year's end. Is that a fair assessment? And are there any changes to it right now?
No. Next question.
Oh, that's nasty.
You could ever do.
That is nasty.
Listen, I used to host several radio shows, and I watch, when you watch TV and all. And the worst thing for an interview is to ask a long, long question and have the person respond in like 3 words. You
set me up on that one, guy. You said, so I'm going to get you back on that.
I had to do that. No, I'll give you more than 3 words to your response. But it's been very hard for me, particularly since where I moved, and let me explain that. In 2009, I moved into a 55 and over community at the time to take in my mom, who was 89 or 88 at the time. And so I've gotten to become friendly with several people well into their 60s and 70s, and they are the group I think that's getting hit the hardest. I've talked about it before. I won't go into it, but how they used to live on income, it's not available anymore. How stocks and house prices used to go up, but they used to depend on that. That doesn't happen, and now their benefit programs and their triple gold, platinum health plan is going to be changed, Medicare, and so. One of the big concerns I see from them, and I see them socially, I don't conduct business with them, is they're very concerned about the market. And what I've noticed since moving in 2009, when it looked like the bottom was falling out and everything was going against them, and they would have just given anything. If their stocks were 20, 30, 40% higher, they would have sold everything. Now that's happened to them, and instead of taking advantage of that, they're actually becoming aggressive buyers again, thinking that they can make up for lost time, as one guy described it last night to me. And so I'm quite concerned that the stock market rally, although having participated in it, having foresee it, have certainly not betting against it, has been beneficial. It has really masked what I really think is further deterioration. We're down the road closer to horrible times than we were in 2009. So my attitude with that is okay, let's not look a gift horse in the mouth. Let's understand that it's still possibly several more months that it could still, like I said, eke out even to a marginal new high, all-time high. But let's not use that as an opportunity to get invested more, but let's try to get to a point where we would have loved to have been in 2009, and that is in a very large cash position.
Okay. Peter, I hate to tell you this. We're going to have to redo the interview. We had a technical problem.
I think that's a joke only because after all the interviews of mine, you have a slightly changed in your tone of voice. But people should know it's not the first time we would have had to done that.
Oh no, no, I've been very good. I think over the last couple of years, it's only happened once or twice. I just thought I'd see if
Okay.
I get you going after you.
Yeah, you would have, but I just had a feeling.
Okay, good call on that one, Peter. Good call on that one.
Hey, a good call for a change. I
There,
haven't been getting many of those calls based on emails, but that's another story.
yeah, that's right. Okay, moving on. To say that you're bearish on U.S. bonds is certainly an understatement. I mean, after all, you said at the start of 2012 that bonds would be the worst investment for the next decade. So why do I feel there's still a growling bear on the other side of this phone line right now?
Oh, yeah. It's an interesting thing. And maybe let's see if I can put it in simple terms. Imagine, if you will, that I ask to borrow money from you, and then you find out that I am creating more money to be borrowed, and then you find out through a paper exchange, I'm actually buying 2/3 of the own debt that I'm creating. You'd be like, man, this guy's never going to be able to pay me back if he's got to resort to that. Well, I put an article up early this morning on my blog about how the Federal Reserve has bought 61% of its own government debt since the bailout started. I mean, almost 2/3 of all the debt, the massive debt that we've created, was not bought by other people, but by ourselves, by just creating another stroke of pen. And it's mind-boggling. First of all, I think you have to first ask yourself, if we didn't do that, where would rates be? Why did we have to do that? Because A, other people didn't want to buy it, because that's why we had to buy it. And what would it mean to, the ramifications of the economy and so forth? So it's a nightmare scenario, compounded by the fact, as you've heard me state to ad nauseum, that who wants to get 2% interest for the next 10 years, knowing inflation's at least twice that amount? And that's why I consider them the worst investment. I just think it's the worst possible place anybody could put new money. I'd sooner buy stocks before I buy bonds.
I mean, you're talking about inflation. On top of that, there's also taxes too that you have to pay on the interest.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's just, I think, an insanity, an accident waiting to happen. And there too, I find the senior community still chasing yield, still locking in new money at low interest rates, getting sucked in, for lack of a better description, into the annuity side of the business because they're able to offer a little bit higher rates. And, people, they're just desperate for income, and they're making poor choices in that desperation.
So where do they go for security?
Well, you see, for security, that's the hook. First of all, the safest thing to do now is keep any maturities very short term, even though they're next to nothing, 0.25%. At least you won't be facing a principal loss. The problem I see for a lot of these older people buying 10, 20, 30 years is who's ever going to inherit their money is going to inherit it potentially with a significant principal loss at hand. And so, and then, of course, those people need the money for other reasons and then take the losses. So I just think there's this misconception, and I know why it is, because Wall Street doesn't make money if it's not charging fees. But there's this misconception all the time that you have to be doing something. If you turn on the TV and a typical strategist comes on, it's always 60% stocks and 40% bonds and this and that. Very few ever say 50, 80, 90% cash because they don't make any money on the cash. But sometimes doing nothing is the best of all worlds. And I think when it comes to bonds, you'd be much better off doing nothing than buying them.
Peter, there's no doctor insignia before your name, and saying that the U.S. dollar is terminally ill may suggest to some that you're a little more than a quack. So, Dr. Grandich, has the patient fooled you, or is your diagnosis still the same?
Well, I guess I'll try to make another comparison. Imagine, if you will, that you turn on the TV and there's a boxing match, and everybody and his mother is now predicting the champ is going to wipe this guy off the face of the earth. You learn that the guy that the underdog has all sorts of problems, medical issues, et cetera, et cetera. But come the 12th and 13th round, the guy's still in the fight. Well, the U.S. dollar has seen the most bullish positions since 1999. Its main competitor, and what it gets compared to the most, is the euro, has been an absolute nightmare scenario in Europe for months, if not a couple of years. There's been dire news about various things, including Greece and the euro. And what's happened? The U.S. dollar has not only not gone anywhere, it's starting to just deteriorate again. Can't even get above 80 on the U.S. dollar index after falling from 120 down to 70. So my feeling is that we're creating a scenario where we're going to have stale bulls, that so many people have taken a bullish position on the dollar. It's not working out. As it starts to deteriorate, they're going to look to exit, and they're going to create more momentum to the downside. I still believe the U.S. dollar index will go to a new low under 70. I certainly said it wouldn't get much above 80, and it hasn't, despite all the bullish calls. And I see that coinciding when reality hits the fan in America after our elections, no matter who's in, and people start to realize that as bad as Europe was, the United States is even a bigger basket case. And that's when I think we'll see the real acceleration to the downside in the currency.
You're calling it terminally ill, and yet you would use the description of a boxer. Maybe it's just a little punch drunk right now.
Well, punch drunk means it can recover. I don't think it can ever recover. I think America's past the point of no return. My simple analysis, and I'm not an economist, and I wouldn't want people to base my opinions thinking I was in any way, shape, or form economist, but I don't think you have to be a rocket scientist to figure out what America has left after it pays for its day-to-day needs. And you look at the amount of debt we have, and there's just not enough cash flow to service the interest, let alone pay down principal. So how do we get bigger and better? We're going the opposite way. We're adding debt instead of looking to get out of it. No country in world history that I know of that had a debt problem solved it by issuing more debt. It's always been the demise of those countries that done that, and that's what I think eventually happens in America.
Okay, let's move on to precious metals. Good news and bad news as far as gold is concerned. Good news, gold and silver are still up from the start of the year. Bad news is that your mother of all gold bull markets may be in danger of maybe being moved to an old age home. So what do you say to people looking for the promised land when it comes to gold, Peter?
Well, like I said, and I've made it known because it gets acute normally at bottoms, but I can see the distress, particularly from retail speculators, and I know why that is. It's not so much that they're losing a large amount in gold and silver, but it's because they own junior resource stocks and they're getting hammered far more percentage-wise than gold and silver. And that's the barometer, and they can't understand it because when gold and silver goes up a lot, the juniors don't respond accordingly to the level that gold and silver did, but it's the moment gold and silver go down, the juniors seem to get exaggerated to the downside, so they end up being bearish at gold and silver, junior resources, and anybody that talks about them. But the facts remain that the gold and silver price, which we're talking about at the moment, is actually higher now than it was the last time the market got as bearish, and I think even people are more bearish now because people who were normally bullish even late last year have pulled in their horns and have written about, if the top isn't in, we're going to take a long time before we can rally again, things of that nature. And so sentiment has turned really on a dime. It's almost 180 degrees from where it was in September. Yet the price of gold and silver as we speak is substantially higher than where it was late last year when we got in a bearish mode. So, the only concern I have is for the next few days. I have no doubt, while I don't believe gold manipulation and silver manipulations happens hour to hour, day by day, as some of my colleagues do, colleagues that I respect, mainly from Gatter, I do believe manipulation is something more than just a rare occurrence. And one of the best times to use manipulation is when markets are known to be historically thinly traded. And that's what's going to happen next week. For all practical purposes, markets shut down for next Thursday, Friday, and in many places other than the United States for Monday as well, Easter Monday. And so it would not come as a surprise to me that we see a washout type move in the metals. I only think it's a 1 in 3 chance. I think we're still the most likely scenario is we continue to make this bottoming process and work our way higher. But even if we get that washout, I don't believe it's the beginning of a new leg down. It will be the final nail in this correction. So I remain very, very strongly bullish. I continue to suggest, as you remember, I suggested since the late last year that if you're conservative on gold, don't buy any until we get too close as above 1,800. You'll have to pay up for it compared to where it is now, but you shouldn't. You should be in a much better bullish technically market then. And if you're a speculator, buy some here. And if we do get a pullback of $100, put what you saved in back at that time. But longer term, anything past the next few days or a few weeks, nothing's changed, and I remain an ardent bull. And I'll wait to the period of time when I can say I told you so, which, I don't think will be as long as many people seem to think at the moment.
Okay, fair enough. Let's move on to black gold. Stay the course when it comes to oil, and also avoid natural gas. That's what you've been saying all along, or at least certainly this year. I don't think anything has really changed from your perspective, has it?
No. I mean, again, this stupidity of the Obama administration, which they're not the first to do it, so you can't just blame them, to attack the oil companies and throw it on the door of oil companies at a time when you should be looking for ways to work with them versus against them. And the worst thing, to use releases from the Strategic Oil Center, which was really put there at much lower prices, cost, for real troubles when we had true oil shortages, not just because prices have gone to levels, is another stupid move. And, this is just setting us up for, as I've said for quite a while now, that $100 oil will become the bottom of the range, not the top. And that's what we're building towards. And, who knows if and when what takes place in the Middle East. But we continue for decades. Like I said, it's not just this president. It's been both sides of the aisle. We've not had a true energy plan for 40 years. We're closing refineries. Regulatory-wise, it's impossible to do any type of thing in natural resources in most states in the United States. It's just an insanity, and it's going to take $5, $6, $7 gas prices, not for a week or a month, but for many months or a year or two, when people finally kick up and also start to realize, and I'm guilty of that maybe we can't drive big luxury cars and we just need to take cars that get us from point A to B, but they go on natural gas or electricity, and then we don't have to worry about a lot of what's taking place in the Middle East or where we're getting our next oil barrel from.
Right. Here where I live, southwestern Ontario, gas is over $1.30 a liter. It's the highest I've ever seen in my life. Where you are in New Jersey, I don't know what your gas price is per gallon.
We're approaching we're approaching $5 in some places.
The reason I'm mentioning about gas prices is George Bush Sr. At one time he had a 90% approval rating after the first Iraq campaign back in the early 90s. And then, of course, he had that slogan, read my lips, no new taxes. He raised gas taxes by 5 cents, and I think he lost. Well, I beg your pardon. I think he lost because of that could have been one of the reasons why he did lose. He went back on his word. How significant is really gas prices, like the key ingredient as to who actually takes over the Oval Office?
Oh, I hate to say it, but if it means getting higher oil prices, in my view, to get Obama out, I hope we have $8 gas. But I can't imagine if we get above 5 on average and stay there this summer, that it bodes well for the Obama administration. And, so I think it's critical. And there are economists, more independent ones, not the guys that are mouthpieces for stock-pushing investment houses, who say that anything move above $5, you really start to knock off percentages off GDP growth. And, you can't really afford that at this time because it's anemic at best. So that, if you're looking for the one straw that breaks the Obama's back administration's opportunity to get reelected, it'll be gas prices.
But, and I'll play devil's advocate just for a second, and I won't kick this dead horse, but really, how much power and how much influence does the president, whoever is in office, can really have in terms of gas prices?
Like I said, this is a problem that's been for 40 years, but
right.
People don't cry and go back to the people who's ever the captain of the ship at the moment inherits all of that.
Exactly. Okay.
But I'm sure he'll find a way to still blame it on Bush. So we'll.
Well, and I'm sure the Republicans will also try to find some way to blame it on Obama. And
Oh, of course they'll milk that.
yeah, exactly. So time will tell, and we'll see how that plays out. All right, we've been talking about different commodities, the resource sector, gold, what have you. Let's focus our discussion more at a micro level. Maybe some individual companies that are on your radar. What are you seeing right now, Peter?
I'll run through some of the Grandich clients, and a lot of these I have large personal holdings in. It's disclosed on my website. Alderon News this week, adding the former premier of Newfoundland to its board, and also perhaps to me was even important news, but most people didn't realize it. The attorney who stepped on the board was the attorney who has a big background in mergers and acquisitions and helped lead Consolidated Thompson's merger. So I continue to point to Alderon as a potential takeover candidate. I think the uranium stocks continue to bow well. Corsair Energy continues to look right. And then there's just, the absolute pain of watching companies just make so much progress on the fundamental side of things and to see their stocks languish. And you can pick them. It's Geologic, it's Excelsior, it's Sunridge Gold. All of them continue to make giant leaps forward corporate-wise. The stocks languish. But as long as they make that progress, I know at the end of the day there's a reward. So I bear the brunt of it, and I get, like I said, people express seemingly like they don't have mirrors in their home to look at who may really be at fault of their situation. So, but I think those things are, they're just really, really attractive. A company I haven't talked about in a while because there's really nothing to say about it. It's in a battle, in an environmental battle, Northern Dynasty. We're finally this year going to see their plans and be able to judge whether or not there's a realistic chance of this mine ever going into production. Until that news comes, there's really nothing more to continue saying about it. A recent new addition to the Grandich clientele, North American Nickel. I think people should really take a serious look at it. It could be one of the better pure exploration plays we've seen in years. It has elephant-sized potential, and that window will start in the June-July period. Something people should look and at least try to get understanding of what it's about. Orman Exploration, I already disclosed again. We went down to a level where 3 times it's rallied 50% from the 80 cents level. I bought another 500,000 shares myself. Timmins Gold, just great more news. Earnings show that this is clearly an emerging significant producer, and a company that I think is following the Timmins Gold role model, but doesn't get any interest at all, and that's because it's a South African-based company, but trades up on the TSX by appointment only, and that's Wits Gold. I just think that's just a company that's really set the stage for a lot of fast and somewhat spectacular growth in the next couple of years. So I think that could cover a lot of companies at this point.
Okay, just to follow up on some of the companies that you had mentioned, and just a footnote to our listeners, you had mentioned Geologics and also Crosshair. I had the ability to, or the opportunity, I should say, to speak to the president and CEO, and I've done an interview with both of them, Dunham Craig and Stuart Wallace, and that should be posted on my website, corporateinterviews.com, probably on Monday. So have a look for that as a means of follow-up, and we're also hoping to do an interview as well with Excelsior. So stay tuned for those developments. Okay, that's it as far as companies are concerned. Let's have some fun. Tim Tebow, going to the Jets. What are your thoughts?
First of all, I got a lot of time for that guy. He's just as genuine as they come. I mean, he handled so much of this media and just the best example of being humble. There's never any me, myself, and I out of him. So as a person, I think the world of him, and I wish him nothing but the best. As a former huge Jet fan who's turned very sour on the present owner and particularly general manager and coach for the idiocy is the way they conducted themselves the last couple of years, and they paid the ultimate price by becoming the laughingstock of New York and then having the Giants come out of nowhere and win the Super Bowl only compounded after them. This was an excellent PR publicity stunt. Was it a football move? Time will tell. But from a publicity standpoint, it was a home run for them. about $2.5 million. They not only removed themselves from being the laughing stock, and no one had an ounce of interest in them in the New York area, to the talk of the town. And all that talk won't stop, at least to the first week. It's only going to accelerate, because all the talk will be about, well, who's going to be the starting quarterback, and what happens the first time Sanchez throws an interception or whatever. Is everybody going to chant Tebow? And they've got back the money they spent on him just on the stuff they're selling and the more people that are going to be in the stands. So from a publicity marketing standpoint, excellent move. Football move, well, I get to hang what I think is the greatest Jet ever, Joe Klecko. He's not thrilled about it. And we do know the one icon the Jets ever had, the one quarterback that took them to the Super Bowl, Joe Namath, has openly stated they think it's a very poor football move. I will say this. The dissension that came out, that was being covered up, that was in the Jets locker room, has not gotten better. It's gotten worse because of this. It's more divided. We even had, their premier defensive star player, who's not ever got involved with any of the nonsense that went in the locker room, said this has only made things worse for the locker room, not better. So I think from the Jets' business standpoint, and the GM and the coach who really bet their ranch now on their staying ability on Tebow magic, probably took 6 months of aggravation off their shoulders that they would have had. But come football season, it might have compounded or put the nail in the coffin to their careers as the Jets.
Peter, I don't understand. How is it bad for the locker room?
Well, let me get it you this way. I don't do really any work with them anymore, so it's not going to hurt me to say this.
Right.
It was clear and evident that Santonio Holmes didn't like Mark Sanchez come the last game. That incident that took place in the huddle and all the stuff that came out later was Santonio Holmes acting as if, Sanchez wasn't doing the right thing, he wasn't getting the ball, et cetera, et cetera. I won't go into it any further, describe how I can say this to you, other than to tell you that it turns out Santonio Holmes misran routes on purpose. So balls that looked like they were overthrown and badly thrown by Sanchez were in fact not. And some players felt Holmes did that on purpose. Now, that's just one example. You saw the acute end of that because of the hostility and how he had to be taken out of the game. Those things don't go away. You can say they made up and all, but believe me, one of the guys that I think is going to be privately chanting Tebow, Tebow is Santonio Holmes. So other players know that and pick up on that, and it's made known. They talk just like other guys talk in other industries. There's division, and as great of a man and as Tebow has been spiritually led, and how that makes me feel and all. At the end of the day, there are guys that don't think that way, that just think in a secular environment, just think as football players, and there's a divided locker room. And a divided locker room that's going to be coached and general managed by the very same people that allowed that divided room to fester. It's not like a new staff came in and, guys could rally around them. Yeah, there's a new offensive coordinator and all. But the two main guys in charge, the coach and general manager, particularly the big mouth coach, is still there. And they're not about to change their personalities. That's who they are. And, so did they buy themselves a time of being abused about the last few years? Absolutely. Every big-time Jet fan that I know, friends and all, who were really disgusted and really their heads were hanging low, and every time they saw a giant blue, guy wearing a jersey, they try to cross the street. They're pounding their chests again. They got new life. They have new hope. And good for them. But if it doesn't translate into winning, which at the end of the thing, that's only going to matter, it's going to make their misery even worse at the end. And the only good news of all that, in my opinion, would be the removal of the GM and the coach to an owner that doesn't understand football, unlike the Maris family, who ran his business with accountants in charge instead of football people. And that's why Woody Johnson continues to pay the price, in my opinion, and is a second or third-rate team compared to the other team that reigns in New York.
Okay, fair enough. Hey, listen, do you think Tebow is just going to be standing on the sideline, being the number 2 quarterback, wearing the baseball cap and holding the clipboard? Or do you think he's going to be on the field at the same time with Sanchez, maybe as a slot back, and every
Oh
once in a
no,
while they'll...
I don't think he'll. I mean, they might put him in the receiver, but I don't think they're going to pass it to him. I think at first it will start out at the way it's been planted, that he's going to be a part of the offensive. But here's the problem, and you're not a Jeff fan, but just for imagine a moment you are.
Okay.
You saw what transpired in Denver.
Yeah.
Call it lucky, call it whatever, call it God-inspired, whatever the case is. You start off every season, every team, you're a Cowboy fan, everybody thinks or hopes they can win the Super Bowl. Things start to go wrong. You go into New England, you lose. Before you know it, the chant is going to be overwhelming. Look, I remember back, this goes back, some people won't remember, but Joe Walton was the coach of the Jets, and the preseason everybody talked he needed to go. The Jets needed a change. It was a 92-degree day. He wore a heavy coat. It turned out we learned that he wore a bulletproof vest that day. They ran 3 plays, the Jets and out, and the first game was the home opener, and the whole stadium chanted, Walton must go. The whole stadium. The whole stadium will chant, Tebow, Tebow, Tebow. The moment it looks like Sanchez or the Jets in general can't win or can't move the ball or whatever it may be. It is unbelievable. And if you take the reason that was first planted by the Jets management, that Mark Sanchez needed motivation. First of all, I've been around him 2 or 3 times. I know people have played with him. I have a couple friends on the team. Mark Sanchez is a very motivated guy. Mark Sanchez is faultless in this other than from a skill standpoint. He's not a cocky. He wasn't an arrogant. He was a team player. He took all the losses on his shoulders and so forth and so on. To think bringing in Tebow is going to motivate him to be a better player is one of the most stupidest thoughts anybody can have. The unbearable pressure that is now on this kid's shoulders isn't going to motivate him. It's going to try to make him to be perfect, which no one can, which will only make him worse, not better. So, like I said at the onset, great marketing and PR move, horrible football move.
Okay, fair enough. I think we'll put you down as a maybe on that one.
Okay.
One last question. Of course, Holy Week next week, as we head towards Good Friday and Easter. I know you're never shy to certainly speak about your faith. So what does Holy Week mean to you?
Well, for a wretched sinner like me who, without the belief and the act that I believe, and it's just me, that Jesus Christ was the Son of God and took everything to that cross. And one of the last words he's always utters that people have to remember, especially when they think they're not worthy, and everybody in the world seems to be beating them down, when he looked and said, "Forgive them, Lord, for they do not know what they do," when he was just crucified in the worst possible way someone could die. To me, it is my saving grace. It is the time when I should be, for the rest of my 51 weeks, that I don't devote in a serious manner to pay homage and to pay thanks and to understand what Good Friday is about, but also what Easter's about. It's not egg. It's nice to have kids, and it's nice to look for eggs and get dressed up and sit down with the family and all. But for Christians, it's really what we really have our hope for, and that's eternal life. Because it would really suck to think that all it is this, that we live and then we just go, it almost say it wouldn't be wise to be a Christian. But I say, actually, it's a better way to live even if we do go puff. But I don't believe we go puff. I believe that there was a creator, and the creator has created a life after death, a life that I've chosen to believe that it's in the Christian manner that people would believe, and in a God who doesn't root or gets happy when we kill somebody. There are certain sects and certain types of religions that actually think God wants them to go out and do harm to people and all. I can't imagine whoever was responsible for the absolute awesome beautiness of the earth and the universe would at the same time take glory that somebody whacked another person today. I just don't,
right.
So I just can't buy into that. So for me, to sum up, to to Holy Thursday to get ready to understand, to wash the passion, as hard as that movie is to watch, and to cry at each time that I'll cry that I watch it, to understand what I believe my Lord and Savior endured that day, only to rise again, is the hope that, knowing that how hopeless I'd be if it was just dependent on me. So that I think is a good description, hopefully, of what this week will mean, at least to me.
Okay, and on that note, Mr. Grandich, that was the wisest thing that you've said in the last half hour.
I guess that's a compliment, but somehow I think later on I'm going to realize it wasn't.
No, Peter, it was a compliment. Peter, as always, thanks very much for your time, and I look forward to talking with you again next week.
Thank you, Al.
Okay. This interview appears on my website, corporateinterviews.com. It can also be accessed on YouTube and iTunes. Just type in Grandich in those respective search engines to not only access this show, but other interviews that we've done in the past. If by chance you have a question for Peter, by all means, send me an email. My email address, very simply, al@corporateinterviews.com. We'll certainly do our best to mention it on our next program, but please keep your question very generic in nature and not company specific. For Peter Grandich, I'm Al O'Grady. Thanks very much for joining us.